The Fermi Paradox. Part 4. The Eternal Optimists. By 1975, the science and technology were deemed mature enough for NASA to contemplate tinkering with the possibilities of SETI. Under the leadership of Philip Morrison, who apparently coined the term SETI in his initial report, NASA established a SETI branch at their Ames Research Center, and a year later at the Jet Propulsion Laboratory. Almost immediately, the idea that a U.S. government agency would divert money to look for little green men attracted vitriol from Congress. In 1978, Senator William Proxmire handed NASA his, quote, Golden Fleece Award for wasting taxpayers' money. He was, however, assuaged after a conversation with Carl Sagan, who, it must be said, had that effect on people. In 1980, the year after he released Cosmos, Carl Sagan co-founded the Planetary Society, dedicated in part to promoting SETI projects. In 1982, Sagan published a petition for SETI in the letters column of the journal Science. Finally, in 1990, SETI became an approved NASA project, budgeted at $12 million per year. Though the project was projected to run appropriately until 2001, Congress cut it completely just 3 years later. During that time, however, NASA managed to launch the most ambitious SETI project ever undertaken, the High Resolution Microwave Survey, or HRMS. Rather than a few dozen channels, the HRMS could scan millions of channels, still focused on the microwave spectrum, but to a higher degree of precision than ever before. After the HRMS was cut from NASA's budget, a number of its scientists simply migrated over to the nonprofit SETI Institute, which had been founded in 1984 as a privately funded alternative to taxpayer and student-funded SETI projects. The Institute had been co-founded by Jill Tarter, the first scientist to dedicate her entire career to SETI science, and the inspiration for the character Ellie Arroway in Carl Sagan's novel Contact, who would later be played by Jodie Foster in the film adaptation. In 1995, the Institute and Tarter essentially resurrected the HRMS program under the appropriate title Project Phoenix, which ran until 2004, examining 800 stars within 200 light-years of the Sun across 2 billion channels between 1.2 and 3 gigahertz. Since we aren't currently exchanging emails with Alpha Centaurians, you can probably guess that Project Phoenix never achieved its goal, and in 2004, project leader Peter Backus was forced to conclude, quote, "We live in a quiet neighborhood." In 2007, thanks to the support of Microsoft co-founder Paul Allen, the SETI Institute was able to finally embark on its own concise version of the Cyclops array. The plan was to start with a 42-dish array, yes, the Douglas Adams reference is deliberate, that would eventually be expanded to 350 dishes, searching millions of channels. However, the project has since stalled, and the array, now known as the Allen Telescope Array, has yet to be expanded beyond its initial number. In 2015, SETI entered a new phase, thanks largely to a $100 million donation from Russian tycoon Yuri Milner, which has been used to purchase thousands of hours of telescope time on radio telescopes at Parkes Observatory in Australia and SETI's ancestral home, the Radio Observatory at Green Bank, Virginia. Launched with great fanfare, the new initiative gathered together many luminaries in the search, from Frank Drake and British astronomer Royal Martin Rees, to Carl Sagan's widow Anne Druyan, and iconic physicist Stephen Hawking, and claims that it could detect an aircraft radar out to the 1,000 nearest stars. Whether this brute force approach will accomplish any more than its predecessors remains to be seen. Some commentators, such as Paul Davies in his book The Eerie Silence, have argued that rather than zeroing ever further in on some patch of the spectrum on the assumption that aliens will be accommodating enough to conform to our preconceptions, we should be thinking outside the box, scanning for encoded patterns and phenomena we haven't begun to master yet, such as neutrinos, lasers, and even light emitted by dead stars. After all, we have only been using radio for 100 years, and who's to say we'll be using it in 100 years' time? Several SETI projects have indeed searched for anomalies in the optical region of the spectrum, and others have attempted to search for patterns in neutrinos. But, however inventive our attempts at contact may be, they are still just shouting into the dark. As this series progresses, it will explore other, more concrete approaches to solving the paradox, before returning to SETI in its conclusion, and discussing whether it has the potential to meet its aspirations.